So, a new structure deck has just been released, meaning everyone's excited to build Cyber Dragons. I mean, it's one of those anime decks that actually managed to stay relevant, and it was used by Yugioh, and he's cool, right?
I'm dying Squirtle.
But there's one problem new Cyber Dragon players have been running into ever since the deck started getting new support. Are Cyber Dragons a control deck, or an OTK deck? Looking at their cards, it's easy to understand the confusion. On one hand, you've got decent searchable trap cards that provide good removal to interrupt your opponent's plays, backed up with a good engine of searches and removal tools to simplify the game state to a point where the special summon of a 2100 attack monster can be game-winning. But then, on the other hand, you have cards like Seeger and Chimeratech Rampage Dragon that allow you to put ridiculous amounts of damage on the board. So, which is best? Well, today, I'll be showing you an example of both, going over which cards are played in one version but not in the other, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of both, in an attempt to answer the age-old question of, how do you play Cyber Dragons? Let's start off with Control Cyber Dragons. One of the main things that sets Control apart from OTK is the lack of the usual combo pieces. Galaxy Soldier and Machine Duplication, absolute staples in combo-oriented builds, are gone, replaced with an array of traps to interrupt your opponent. You also run less actual Cyber Dragon cards. Your win condition is less about making strong boards with your monsters, and more about using a compact core of, core, along with Hertz and Cyber Emergency, to grind out games before finishing your opponent off with a fusion. Here's what a Control Cyber Dragon deck might look like. As you might expect, it's a very purple deck. You're running a lot of traps, which is kinda the whole point of the Control version, but also one of its strengths. It's easy to adapt this deck to whatever the current meta is. Whenever a powerful generic new trap is released, it could find a home in this deck, swapping out whichever trap is least effective in exchange for something that helps counter the meta. Same for the hand traps, obviously. So for the actual monsters, you run 3 core, 3 Hertz, 2 Dragon, 2 Veer, and 1 Dry. Core and Hertz both search things and provide this deck with the grind game it needs to actually make use of the control you get from your traps. Cyber Dragon is a very searchable beat stick, allowing you to get over some monsters, or to just get in some damage, and of course lets you make some Xyz plays occasionally. Veer is there to chain block Core, since that'll usually be your most important search. You just normal summon Core, and since this will trigger off Core's normal summon, they won't be able to prevent Core's search. Finally, Dry is good on later turns when you've slowed your opponent down and managed to keep something on the board, because you can then just summon it, make your monsters level 5, and then make a Nova into an Infinity. You then run 3 Emergency for the searches, an Overload and a Cyberload fusion to help you push for game later on, and then 3 Overflow since it's a good searchable removal card that puts your Cyber Dragons to good use. Shizukuru is there to help you remove boss monsters that are giving you trouble, and Ash Blossom's just a good hand trap to slow your opponents down. Now for the traps. This part of the deck is most likely to change over time, so you basically just run whatever traps are good against the current meta right now. Dogmatica Punishment, along with Entis in the extra deck, pops 2 cards. Ice Dragon's Prison can deal with pretty much anything, including a Dragoon, and Imperm is a hand trap that of course doubles as a decent trap. Then Torrential Tribute and Solemn Strike work well both individually or together to clear an entire board even if your opponent does have a bunch of negates. You can even blow up a Hertz that you set on your first turn to get a search after clearing a board. Finally, run 2 copies of Trap Trick just for flexibility. For the extra deck, your main tools are the Contact Fusions, allowing you to either remove machine-type monsters like Zeus, or any monster in the extra monster zone. The other Cyber Dragons aren't summoned as frequently as in other Cyber Dragon builds, but if you're able to make them after wearing your opponents down, you'll often be winning the game. Macabra's there in case your opponent tries to destroy Nova, and Tis is there for the punishments. Zeus is occasionally useful for board clearing, and finally Anima can turn your core or Hertz into the steal of a monster if your opponent places their monsters in front of an extra monster zone. Now for some options. A very powerful card, depending on the current meta, is Rivalry of Warlords. Since you basically only run machines, it's free for you, but a pain to deal with for your opponent. If you're on a budget, you can run cards like Lost Wind and Titanocider for a recyclable monster negate. And Warning Point is a very cheap way of stopping your opponent's combos. Evenly Matched is a good card to have, at least for a side deck option, because you're probably not going to ATK in this build anyway, so if you're forced to go second, it's a good option. Also, if you have Verti, you should run it since it helps push the game faster with Overload Fusion. Finally, I have to at least mention DNA Surgery, since resolving it is such a powerful effect. Just like Torrential Tribute with Solemn Judgment, if you can activate this and back it up with a counter trap, you can turn everything into machines, and then contact fuse your entire opponent's board away for a Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. So why would you play this version of Cyber Dragons? Well, for one, it's usually the cheaper option compared to the ATK variant. The most expensive card is Ice Dragon's Prison, and like I said, you can substitute it for other good traps. Secondly, this version isn't weak to a lot of common floodgates. Barrier Statues and Imperial Order don't do much to this deck, and being hit by Revolt also isn't too big of a deal for it. So basically it's fairly good against a meta, especially if you adapt it over time to counter it even better. Finally, it's a good option if you enjoy control decks, but also like to have the option of occasionally putting out a lot of damage. For some of you, that version will be fine, but I just know that everyone else is sitting there thinking that playing Cyber Dragons in that way is a huge waste of a cool deck. I mean, where are the combos? Where are the big extra deck monsters with huge damage numbers? Why would anyone want a game of Yu-Gi-Oh to last more than 2 turns? If this describes you, then the ATK version is the one for you. There are 2 main differences between the Control and ATK version. In the ATK build, you're running a lot more Cyber Dragon cards, as well as some important combo pieces, and secondly, you load up the deck with a bunch of going second cards to help facilitate the ATK. You basically just blind second, remove as much of their board as possible, and then smash into them as hard as you can. To give an example of an ATK build, here's what it might look like. Jizukiri becomes more important to kaiju away your opponent's monsters, Galaxy Soldier allows you to get your combo started so you max out on it, and Nasha is run at 2 or 3 alongside 1 Veer, since they'll help get more monsters out on the field. Your other important combo piece, Machine Duplication, also shows up in this build, turning a Core or a Hertz into 2 more Cyber Dragons straight from your deck, since they all share the same name when on the field. Cyber Repair Plant and Rev System are also played in this build, acting as a searcher for more Cyber Dragons or even your Jizukiri, and the other basically just being a monster reborn. Overload and Cyberload Fusion are options for making your fusion monsters, with Verti being able to send them straight from your deck to push the game. Instant Fusion allows you to summon another level 5 light machine on your field for your Xyz plays, and 1-for-1 sets up your graveyard while getting one of your level 1 Cyber Dragons out. Then just run a bunch of going second blowout cards with a copy of Harpy's Feather Duster, and 3 Forbidden Droplet and Lightning Storms. Finally, the Structure deck actually helps out this version, thanks to a tiny Cyberdark engine. Cyberdark Realm is searchable by Core, which can then search Chimera and give you an extra normal summon to summon it, and then Chimera can search Power Bond with the bonus of you being able to use monsters in your graveyard for its fusion. You then have a Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon with 4200 attack, which is an easy ATK thanks to its multiple attacks. The extra deck isn't too different, but you have more focus on the multi-attack fusion since they're your main win condition. Also, your links are more important, with Verti really helping some hands push for damage, Almirage starting your combos by getting a Core or Hertz in the graveyard, and then Suga boosting your fusions to even greater heights. If you really just like seeing big numbers and doing lots of damage, you could also consider running any number of limiter removals, but honestly, it's a bit overkill at that point. So why play this version? Well, its ability to quickly and consistently end games is great for preventing your opponent from dragging you into a grind game, and also great for winning in time by closing your games out quickly. Also, by going second, you can really make use of your going second cards that can wipe your opponent's field, making the work they put into building their board go to waste. But let's be honest, the real reason you're playing this build is because you like hitting things really hard with big numbers. Don't try to deny it. So which one's best? How should you play Cyber Dragons? Well, as with everything, it depends on the meta. During the days of VFD's reign, the trap version was much better, while in some formats, it would be easier to just OTK them. Also, player preference does come into it. some people hate the longer games that come from the control variant, while other people won't enjoy just going for damage every game. But if I really had to choose between control and ATK, well, why not both? A fundamental problem with people framing Cyber Dragons as either a control deck or an ATK deck is that they're ignoring a big part of Cyber Dragon's strength, the fact that it can actually adapt really well to going first or second. It has a great extra deck with tons of options, so why limit yourself to just one or the other? Here's my answer to that, a best of both worlds type deck, giving you the combo potential of the ATK build as well as the damage, but also giving you plenty of going first options and easy access to Cyber Dragon Infinity. You run quite a lot of Cyber Dragons, with 2 Galaxy Soldiers and a Jizukiri as your supporting light machines to search or discard in your combos. Chimera's also here for the same combo as in the ATK build, since it's small enough to fit into the deck fairly easily, and the payoff is worth it. You also run an artifact package in this deck, which works quite well with the focus on rank 5s that this deck has. Sanctum can summon a Scythe to lock your opponent out of their extra deck, and if you draw Scythe, you can make an artifact Durandal to force your opponent to destroy it, triggering its effect. This version has room both for some hand traps as well as the combo pieces like Machine Duplication, but you're also backing it up with traps like Sanctum, Imperm, and a searchable Overflow. This time around, your deck is more focused on rank 5 monsters, so you also run a Vimana for another monster negate, a Pleiades for a quick effect Compulse, and Durandal to either shuffle back your hand and draw, or to force your opponent to pop your back row, which also works well as Overflow since that'll give you a search when it's destroyed. You also double up on your Novas and Infinities since you'll be focused on making them a lot more often. Back that up was the powerful removal of the Chimera techs, the ATK potential of Rampage Dragon, and the utility of Seeger, 30 and Almirage, and you've got yourself a powerful, well-rounded deck. As a side note, Dragoon works really well in this deck, especially since you're usually running Verti anyway. If you do own a copy, just use it since it can make your going first boards even more powerful. So what version of Cyber Dragons do you prefer? Are you going to stick to the control or ATK variants, or try a mix of both like the third build? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're there, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching!